Darwi Odrade gave the order to stop hiding while holding her own father in her arms. He weighed about 4 kilos, had the pink face of a newborn, and had been grown from nail scrapings clipped off a corpse. The Sisterhood's axolotl tanks had spent years rebuilding him cell by cell. This ghola child named Miles Teg, cloned from a legendary military commander who did something on a planet called Gamu that the enemy still could not explain. Something that made them burn an entire world to ash rather than face him again. Odrade looked down at the infant and said, "It isn't every woman who can preside at the birth of her own father." Then she told her council, "The Honored Matres have glassed 16 of our planets." Palmakeep just went silent. "We are done waiting in defensive enclaves. We are going to make ourselves indigestible. We are going to bait a trap and walk into it ourselves." This is Chapterhouse, Dune, the sixth and final Dune novel Frank Herbert completed, and the one where the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood, down to a handful of holdout planets, turns a newborn ghola into a weapon it does not fully understand. Odrade is not a prophet. She does not see victory. She sees a tightrope over a chasm, and behind her on the rope an axe wielder walking closer with every step. Her gamble, restore the dead commander's memories inside that child and force a confrontation before there is nothing left to save. Episode 1. The Birth of a Weapon. Darwi Odrade, Mother Superior of the Bene Gesserit, held the ghola baby in her arms and felt history slip sideways. The infant cells had been harvested from nail scrapings of the original Miles Teg, the old commander who had died on Arrakis, who had done something on Gamu that the Honored Matres still could not explain. Now the child lay in Odrade's private dining room atop Central, the highest point of the Sisterhood's fortress complex on Chapterhouse. "It isn't every woman who can preside at the birth of her own father," she quipped. Tamerlane allowed a thin smile. Belanda, the heavy-set archivist and mentat, kept her fleshy face completely still, her version of a scowl. "We have no time for time-wasting nonsense," the archivist said. But Odrade did not release the child. The tiny face was pink, the eyes a clear gray. He would grow into the hawk-nosed, sharp-featured face the archives preserved in holo, a face that had made powerful people confess their secrets. For this one moment, he was simply a victory of the axolotl tanks, those repurposed wombs the Tlialaxu had once kept as their darkest secret. "Tam, do you see the resemblance?" His jaw, it will be the original's jaw. The name hung in the air. The Sisterhood had grown this ghola for a reason no one needed to state aloud. The Honored Matres, those violent, sexually addictive women who had stormed back from the scattering, had annihilated 16 planets. They killed without negotiation. They captured sisters and tortured them until the bodies could no longer hold life. They had something called the weapon, and whatever it was, it left nothing behind but char and silence. Belanda cleared her throat, the prelude to a list of disasters. Palmakeep has gone silent. Last communication was 3 standard days ago. The courier drone contained no message, only a positioning beacon switched off and then back on. "Honored Matres," Odrade said. "It was not a question. Probability exceeds 90%. The pattern matches Lazoria and Richesi." Belanda's hands flattened on the table. "A transmission from Basel. The Honored Matres have been seen in orbit. Tortuga reports 3 destroyers and requests evacuation authorization. Denied. If we evacuate, they will know we have no defenses and accelerate. Basel is a rock in the stream. The water must flow around it." Odrade looked down at the baby. "We have been waiting, and what has waiting achieved? We've become fat on our own caution." Belanda's face reddened. The comment about fatness had not been subtle. "I am not calling you a coward, Belle. I am calling us all cowards. We write off planets as if they were entries in a ledger. When the Honored Matres finally find Chapterhouse, what will we do? Die bravely? That is not a strategy." Odrade placed the baby into the arms of the souk attendant. "Take him to the nursery. I want nutrition levels checked every 2 hours." When the door sealed, she turned back to her counselors. "I am authorizing the write-off of Palmakeep. All records marked lost and sealed. And I am issuing a new coda memorandum." She spoke slowly, giving the archivist time to record. "We will not sit and wait in defensive enclaves. This place is one of our weaknesses. We have made ourselves comfortable while the hunters sharpen their knives. No more. We will become indigestible. The hunters will swallow us and find we are poison." Belanda's fingers moved on the table's control surface, but her expression had shifted from resentment to fear. If we stop hiding, they will find us faster. Then let them come faster. We're going to make a trap. Well, make ourselves the bait. The Hunter's Chamber. Far from Chapterhouse, on the Honored Matre stronghold world of Junction, Great Honored Matre Dama presided over a dark chamber lit only by floor-level glow globes. The walls were covered in black material that absorbed light and sound like standing inside a throat. Dama sat on a plain bench and watched her aides prepare the captive. The woman was a sister named Sabanda, held in isolation for 11 days without melange. Her face was gaunt, but her eyes remained focused. Logno, Dama's chief aide, stood at the captive's shoulder holding a shuntgoad. She still refuses to speak except to recite nonsense, Logno reported. Dama studied the prisoner. Sabanda's robe had been taken, leaving her in a thin shift standard procedure to remove dignity and find the breaking point. But her posture remained erect. Her breathing was slow and even. She has refused melange 3 times. She says her body is a temporary vessel and she will not poison it with bargains. Dama approached, stopping just outside the reach of the captive's hands. You know who I am and what I can do to you. You can kill this body. You cannot touch what I am. Dama forced her temper down. This woman's calm was infuriating precisely because she recognized it, the ability to retreat inward, to separate the self from the flesh. We have extracted information from 6 of your sisters. 4 died, but we learned a great deal. We know about the ghola of your old commander. Something flickered in Sabanda's eyes, not fear, but satisfaction. Then you know little of consequence. Logno drove the shunt goad into the captive's spine. Her body seized. A line of blood appeared where she bit through her lip, but she did not scream. When the spasm passed, she straightened herself with visible effort. What do you know about Chiana? Dama asked. Sabanda smiled a real smile, with warmth behind it. Blood ran down her chin. Chiana would not like it if you worshipped her. We do not worship anyone. No, you do not. And that is why you will fail. Dama signaled to Logno. Bring the futar. A panel slid aside, and a cage glided into the room. Inside crouched a lean, hairless creature with skin the color of pale copper. Its mouth was too wide. Its canines were long and yellow-white. The eyes held predator awareness, yet the creature purred like a cat when Dama spoke to it. Want back rub, the futar rumbled. Later, darling. She reached through the bars and scratched behind its ear. The purring intensified. Want eat, it said, gaze fixed on Sabanda. She is a test subject, not food. Dama turned back to the captive. I will ask you one more time. Where is Chapterhouse? Sabanda looked at the futar, then back at her interrogator. In your fear, Dama's control broke. Her orange-flecked eyes flared with adrenaline, the lethal speed that gave the Honored Matres their reputation. Sabanda's neck snapped before her body registered the blow. She crumpled, and the futar made a sound half growl, half whimper. Have the body examined, Dama said, breathing hard. I want to know if there's any way to neutralize the shear before extraction. Logno signaled the guards. 2 women began dragging the body away. Dama spoke more to herself than to her aide. What do they have that we do not? We offer survival, pleasure, everything that should motivate a human being, and they choose death instead. Dama. Logno had no answer. In the shadows, the futar began to purr again. The Orchard Lesson. The orchards of Chapterhouse were the oldest living things. The Sisterhood possessed genetically tailored oaks whose wood was still green with sap after 1900 years. Morning sunlight fell through the canopy in golden shafts, and the air smelled of fallen apples and damp earth. Odrade walked barefoot through the grass. Beside her walked the ghola child, 7 years old now, lean and watchful. He moved with a stillness unusual in a child, holding his body as if expecting attack from any direction. Why is the grass here? The boy asked. They stood where irrigated ground gave way to wild vegetation, and beyond that, the desert. The desert was growing. Everyone on Chapterhouse knew it. Since the sand trout had been brought from Rakis, the rains came less often. The truffles were dying. The grass protects the soil. Without it, the wind would strip the ground to rock. The boy crouched and examined the roots, testing her statement. At 7, he already had a mentat's analytical instinct. The Sisterhood planted this grass. We chose the species, prepared the ground and tend it, but we do not own it. We are stewards, not possessors. Do you understand the difference? He thought about this. His gray eyes narrowed. A steward serves the land. An owner makes the land serve him. Very good. And which does the sisterhood do? You serve the land. But you also serve the sisterhood. Easy that a conflict? Odrade felt a chill. The question was far too perceptive. She crouched beside him. Miles, do you remember things that you cannot explain? His eyes widened. Sometimes, when I sleep, I see places I do not know. A room with mirrors, a man with metal eyes. He hesitated. Who am I, really? You are Miles Teg. You were grown from cells taken from a very great man, the original commander, the old Miles Teg. He was my father. She watched the words land. I am one of his daughters, in the sense that matters. He absorbed this without shock. He had known something was different about his origins. He had simply lacked the vocabulary to ask. What happened to him? To the original? He died on a planet called Rockies, destroyed by the Honored Matres. Then, I am a replacement. No, you are something new, something that has never existed before. A ghola is not a copy. It is a new life grown from old material. What you become is your own choice. The boy looked toward the desert. There are gaps in my memory, places where things should be, but they are not. Like holes in a curtain, those gaps may fill, or they may not. You must learn to live with the uncertainty. She did not tell him the rest, that the original Teg had moved with speed no human should possess. Those were secrets for another day. Come, I want to show you the irrigation controls. You should understand how this planet works if you are going to help us defend it. As they walked, the boy glanced back once at the desert, his small face holding an expression she recognized. He was trying to remember. The nightmare and the news. Odrade woke from the nightmare with her heart slamming against her ribs. In the dream, she was a sea child again, standing on a rope bridge suspended over a chasm so deep the bottom was lost in darkness. Ahead of her, the far side invisible in mist. And behind her, she could never turn around. She knew there was an axe wielder walking the rope, coming closer with every step. The axe would be very sharp. The axe wielder did not hurry. There was no need to hurry, because the rope was the only path, and there was nowhere to go. The door chimed. Belanda came through, already speaking. Lampadas is gone. The words landed like a physical blow. The prescient fear had been wrong. The axe had not been aimed at her. It had been aimed at Lampadas, the largest Bene Gesserit school planet, home to 7 million people, including 7,000 Reverend Mothers. The Bashar Burzmali and the Reverend Mother Lucilla had been stationed there. All dead? Odrade heard her own voice as if from a distance. All dead. The weapon was used 4 times. The atmosphere is burning. Nothing survived. Odrade stood and walked to the window. Outside, the orchards lay silver under a quarter moon. Somewhere among those trees, the sisters bury their dead vertically beneath the roots. But on Lampadas, there would be no bodies to bury. Nothing to feed anything. Odrade, there is something else. We do not know for certain that all are dead. The weapon's effects are inconsistent at the edges. Some may have escaped if they were in a no-ship, if they were shielded. On Rockies, a single worm had survived. No humans had survived at all. She had been having variations of this nightmare for months. Now she understood why. The dream was a prescient warning, consistent, too specific to ignore. Someone had been moving closer to her back, and when the axe fell, she had not seen it coming. The axe had been Lampadas. When Belanda was gone, Odrade splashed cold water on her face. The Mother Superior had known the sisterhood was losing ground, but she had not expected this. Lampadas was a core world, a fortress, the place where the sisterhood trained its finest minds, and now it was ash. We will not sit and wait in defensive enclaves, she said to her reflection. Well, the words felt different now. Before, they had been a declaration. Now they were a requirement. The sisterhood had no more defensive enclaves to retreat to. The fugitive on Gamu. On Gamu, the rain was acidic thin gray sheets that stung exposed skin. Reverend Mother Lucilla stood at the window of a farmhouse in the agricultural zone and watched workers move with the hunched efficiency of people who knew they were being watched from orbit. She had been here 11 days. Her no-ship, damaged during an escape she could barely reconstruct, had crash-landed in the hills. She had walked 10 kilometers on foot, arriving with her robes torn and her skin raw from the rain. The rabbi leader of this hidden community had taken her in without hesitation. The Jews of Gamu were a secret the Bene Gesserit had nurtured for centuries. They maintained complete cover on dozens of planets. a hidden network preserving ancient traditions while serving the sisterhood as message passers and safe houses. The arrangement had held for longer than either side's written records could confirm. You should not stand at the window. The rabbi's voice came from behind her, a small man with a neatly trimmed gray beard and eyes that moved constantly. The new governor has increased surveillance. They have satellites that can read the printing on a food wrapper. Lucilla stepped away and drew the curtain. You have word from the city? Worse. I was summoned. The guild navigator Edric wanted to speak with me. The rabbi reeked of melange. He knows someone is hiding here, someone with Siona blood. They cannot see her directly, but they can see the hole she makes in their calculations. He offered me a great deal of money. And you told him nothing? I told him nothing true. The rabbi's eyes met hers, and she saw calculation there. I told him about the economic view behind the Honored Matres' activities. He found that quite interesting. They do not conquer for ideology, they conquer for markets. An empire that trades openly is easier for the guild to deal with. Lucilla understood immediately. If the Honored Matres offered an economic framework his people could live within, would the secret alliance still hold? The Jews had survived thousands of years by making themselves useful to successive empires. You're considering negotiating with them, she said. I am considering how to keep my people alive. I am responsible for 37,000 souls on this planet alone. You ask me to risk them all for a single fugitive. I ask you to honor the debt your people owe to my sisterhood. Debts are negotiable. The words hung in the room. The rabbi had laid out the terms under which he might betray her, terms that made sense from his perspective. The Honored Matres did not care about ancient religions. If the Jews could prove their value as intermediaries, they might survive under the new order. But Lucilla carried something more valuable than her own life. She carried the memories of Lampadas, 7,000 reverend mothers whose accumulated knowledge could not be allowed to die. Do you know what happened on Lampadas? 7 million dead, 7,000 reverend mothers, and I am the only one who escaped. She let the weight settle. The sisterhood will not forget which of its allies helped that escape and which ones negotiated. The rabbi stood. His voice was steady. I will do what I must. Give me your word that you will accept my solution, whatever it is, without argument. You're asking me to trust you. I am asking you to trust the debt you claim exists. Lucilla looked at him for a long moment. She could kill him before he reached the door. But Gamu was a prison, not a sanctuary, and she had no way off the planet. You have my word. The sharing. 3 hours later, a young woman entered the room, perhaps 25. Dark hair pulled back severely, eyes showing the total blue of spice addiction. But more than that, Lucilla recognized the markers. This woman had survived the spice agony. She was a wild reverend mother. My name is Rebecca. Rabbi says I am to share with you. Sharing was the ultimate intimacy, complete transfer of one reverend mother's memories into another's mind. Only in extremis, because it meant the death of the one who gave. He's selling me to the Honored Matres, Lucilla said. Rebecca nodded, her hand shaking. The agent who drove you here was one of theirs. The Honored Matres will arrive within the hour. The rabbi has negotiated safe passage for his people. The price is you. Lucilla closed her eyes. The betrayal was expected, yet the confirmation still hurt. The rabbi had made the only decision that could save his 37,000. One reverend mother in exchange for a community. And you? Why are you here? Because the sisterhood is my people too. I underwent the agony alone. No training, no preparation. The other memory opened, and I nearly died. But I survived. Now I carry my mother's. What I lack is training. What you lack is a vessel to carry your memories forward. Together, we solve both problems. Lucilla took Rebecca's hands. Do you know what you're offering? Once we share, you will never be only yourself again. My memories will become your memories. You will dream my dreams, feel my griefs, carry my obligations. The Lampadas hoard every reverend mother who died in that attack. They are in me now. When you take them, you will take their weight as well. I know. Rebecca's blue eyes met Lucilla's without flinching. I am ready. Lucilla pulled the younger woman closer and pressed their foreheads together. The sharing began as warmth in her chest, spreading outward until her nerve endings burned. She opened her mind completely and let everything pour out. 40 years of diplomatic missions, the secret codes, the names of every reverend mother who had died in loyal service. and the Lampadas horde, 7,622,014 Reverend Mothers, each with her chain of ancestors. They flooded into Rebecca's mind in a torrent that would have killed a normal woman, but Rebecca's body had been reshaped by the agony. She could hold them. When it was done, Rebecca wept silent tears. "You have given me everything. I have given you a burden. When you reach the sisterhood, tell them what happened here. Tell them the Jews honored their debt, even when the price was steep. And tell Mother Superior Odrade Lucilla gathered her last strength. Tell her the trap must be sprung soon. The Honored Matres are more afraid than they show. Something out there hunts them, and they are running. If we can push them, they may break." The door opened. The rabbi stood in the frame, his face a mask of controlled grief. "They are here." Lucilla stood, straightened her borrowed garments, and walked past the rabbi without looking at him. In the yard, a tubular cage stood on a flatbed carrier, 4 armored Honored Matre guards beside it. In the moment before the cage closed, she turned and met Rebecca's eyes. She did not smile, but the message was clear, transmitted through their shared memories. "Remember, carry us forward." The Desert Waif's Rebellion. At Desert Watch, the southernmost outpost on Chapterhouse, Shiana stood in her workroom and looked at the sculpture she could not finish. A column of black plaz, vaguely human but deliberately ambiguous, neither male nor female, neither standing nor kneeling. She had been working on it for 3 weeks. Shiana was the desert waif from Dune, the girl who had commanded the sandworms of Rakis before she was old enough to understand what she was doing. The Missionaria Protectiva was preparing to elevate her as a living goddess if the worms returned to Chapterhouse. It was a role she had never asked for and did not want. An acolyte tapped on the door. "Reverend Mother, the search teams report no signs of sandworms. The spice mass is growing, but no worms have emerged yet." When the acolyte was gone, Shiana uncovered the sculpture. The black plaz absorbed light in a way that was almost troubling. It seemed to pull vision into itself, offering nothing back. She had created it using a shaping technique no one had taught her, a way of altering plaz at room temperature through fingertip pressure. The Sisterhood's technical specialists would say it was impossible, but the sculpture existed, and Shiana had made it. She had told no one about the technique, not even Odrade. The Mother Superior's scrutiny had begun to feel suffocating. Shiana knew she was being groomed for the council, possibly for succession, and she knew the Sisterhood's plans included responsibilities she had never consented to carry. At the edge of her vision, someone signaled from the shadow of the supply shed hand talk, the old Atreides battle language. Idaho stood in a spot the calm eyes could not see. Shiana stepped to the window and signed back. "They are pressuring you. They want me to be the living icon. The mission area is ready to launch. If worms appear, they will make me into a religious figure. Will worms appear? Possibly. The spice mass is active, and if worms come, what will you do?" Shiana paused. Submit to the Sisterhood's plan? Become a figurehead for a religion she did not believe in? "I am making a sculpture called Void. Odrade has seen it and gave no sign of what she found. She said nothing. Whatever I am becoming, the Sisterhood cannot fully see it." Idaho's hands were still. Then, "Be careful. Odrade is more dangerous than she appears. She loves the Sisterhood, but she loves her own plans more. And you? Whose side are you on? My own? I am a game piece that cannot be moved until I choose to move myself." The hand-sign conversation ended. Shiana turned back to her sculpture, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She and Idaho had kept this secret communication for months. Anyone who found out would suspect collusion, possibly treachery. But the truth was simpler and more frightening. They were both trapped by the Sisterhood's expectations, and they were both looking for a way out, common in Tanisterns by evertation. The Vision in the No-Ship. Deep in the no-ship, on Chapterhouse's landing flat, Idaho walked the corridors of the Great Hold and felt his mind shift into mentat mode. The data was there, fragments, patterns, inconsistencies others missed, but he needed more pieces before assembling a prime projection. The no-ship was a prison with invisible walls. Its Ixian systems recorded every movement, every word. The Bene Gesserit watchdogs monitored his activity in shifts. He had hidden a small data cache in the ship's storage systems, booby-trapped to self-destruct, but he knew it was temporary. Odrade was too sharp. He paused where the culmize had coverage gaps, not enough to evade detection entirely, but enough to think without real-time monitoring. Then it came. It was not a mentat projection. The image felt inserted someone else's memory pressed into his mind. A shimmering net appeared, undulating like a borealis, waves of green and silver light that parted as if drawn aside. Through the gap, he saw a garden of impossible beauty. An elderly couple sat at a small table with steaming cups. The woman looked up and stared directly at him. Her face was round, grandmotherly, with deep laugh lines. "His watching again. Let him watch," the man said. "It's dangerous to interfere." "Hez one of ours, though. We should at least say hello. Saying hello is the first step to getting involved. You know the rules." The woman sighed and sipped her cup. "He's got Talilaxu modifications." "I can see the weave." "Of course you can." You put it there, the net began to close. Idaho felt a sharp pain in his temples, a whistling sound that drilled into his skull. He tried to call out, but his voice would not work. The old woman raised her cup in a mock toast. "Good luck, Duncan Idaho. Don't let them trap you again." The net closed, and the corridor was just a corridor again. Idaho leaned against a storage container, shaking. This was not his own mind assembling information. This was someone reaching in. Face dancers, he thought. The faces had been too smooth, too symmetrical. The woman had said his one of ours Idaho had been grown from cells taken by the Talilaxu, regenerated in axolotl tanks, enhanced by genetic manipulation. Did they still consider him property? Or was something else happening, something connected to the Honored Matres invasion, the scattering, the long silence from the rest of the human universe? He did not know, but the vision was a thread, and a mentat's job was to pull threads until the whole cloth unraveled. He pressed his comai. "I need to speak with the Mother Superior. It's urgent." The Talilaxu prisoner. In her workroom, Odrade sat across from the Talilaxu master Skitail and watched him try to hide his desperation. Skitail was last of the Meshake, the ruling caste, and his bargaining position was, by any rational measure, non-existent. Yet he still negotiated as if he held high cards. "I require face dancer servants. They are necessary for my dignity as a condition of continued cooperation. You are a prisoner, Master Skitail. Prisoners do not negotiate for servants. I am a necessary resource. The axolotl tanks require continuous monitoring. I am the only one who understands the full protocol." Odrade let the silence stretch. The Talilaxu master's fingers kept moving toward his chest, touching a spot below his sternum. Something was concealed there, something he was afraid she would discover. The axolotl protocol was a bargaining chip, but it was not his real leverage. "Let me tell you what I know about the Talilaxu," she said. The masters carried null entropy capsules containing cellular samples of everyone they considered significant. Paul Atreides, Chani, the original Duncan Idaho. You, Skitail, were in a position of high authority. You would have been entrusted with such a capsule. The prisoner's hand stopped moving toward his chest. His face betrayed nothing, but the stillness was its own confession. "What do you want?" he asked. "The axolotl tank protocols. Complete, no more fragments. And I want to know what is in the capsule. The capsule is my people's legacy. It is not for trade. Everything is for trade. I am not threatening you. I am offering you a partnership. The sisterhood needs mélange at scale. You need protection. Your people need a safe place to continue their work. Face dancers, once we understand them better, may be permitted, but I will not give you tools I do not fully control." Sital studied her. "I will consider your offer. Consider quickly. The Honored Matres are moving faster than either of us would like." After the Taliabsu master was escorted out, Odrade sat alone and let herself feel the weight of what she had committed to. The Taliaksu were dangerous, their technology, their genetic manipulations, their religious fanaticism. But the sisterhood had no choice. They needed the spice, and the spice came from the worms, and the worms came from the desert. The desert was already spreading, inch by inch, year by year. The planet was transforming, and the sisterhood was transforming with it. The council decision. Belanda and Tamerlane were waiting in the council chamber. The sun was setting. Reddish dust from the desert thickened the air. "You called us," the archivist said, still angry about the morning's confrontation. "I have made a decision." Odrade remained standing. "I am sending the ghola child into the no ship with Duncan Idaho and Marbella. Idaho will attempt to restore the original Teg's memories." The silence was absolute. "You cannot be serious," Belanda said. The child is 10 years old. If the restoration fails, he could be mentally shattered. If it succeeds, we have no way to control what might emerge. We do not even understand what the original did on Gamu. I know what he did. He moved faster than an honored matre. He saw things that should have been invisible. He was something the breeding program produced, and we do not know how. Odrade looked toward the desert. We need that something. The honored matres are afraid of what the old commander represented, so afraid they burned Rakas to ash. If we can restore that, we have a weapon they cannot counter. And what if the process kills the boy? Tamalane's voice was a rustle of leaves. Then we have lost a ghola. We will grow another. Odrade's voice was harder than she felt. But if we do not try, we lose everything. Our defensive strategy has failed. Our offensive strategy must begin now. You're gambling with our future, Belanda said. I am gambling for our survival. Those are not the same thing. I need an inventor. Idaho dreams weapon designs and writes them down. He hides his mentat abilities because he knows we are afraid of them, but those abilities are exactly what we need. I am freeing his mind, not his body. He will still be in the no ship, still under our control. But he will have a reason to help us. What reason? Tamerlane asked. The boy. The old commander was his friend. His commander, Idaho, will want to restore young Teg badly enough to cooperate. And once the restoration succeeds, we will have a weapon who remembers how to fight. Belanda stood. And if the restored ghola decides the sisterhood is not worth saving? One crisis at a time, Bell. Odrade touched the call field embedded in the table. Politics. I want Streggy to bring the boy. We will tell him what is happening and walk him to the no-ship ourselves. Tamerlane raised a hand. Her sunken eyes focused on the Mother Superior with new intensity. You are planning something larger, something beyond the memory restoration. I am planning to bait the Bull Junction. Yes, we will feint at Gamu, draw their forces, and then hit their leader's stronghold. And I will go myself as part of the feint. If they think they have the Mother Superior, they will be distracted enough for the ghola to finish the job. Belanda's face went pale. You cannot go yourself if they capture you. Have you ever heard of a Reverend Mother being broken, not tortured, not killed, made to betray the sisterhood? It has never happened. They will torture me. They may kill me. They will not break me. And if you die, then you will have the restored ghola to carry on the fight. And if Merbella survives her agony, Odrade paused. If Merbella survives, she may become the bridge we need. A woman who understands both sides. A woman who can bring the honored matres into the fold rather than simply destroying them. Belanda shook her head. You're asking us to bet everything on a series of mabes. I'm asking you to trust me. Odrade placed her hand on the archivist's thick forearm. Bell, you have been my most honest counselor. I need you to follow, not because I am certain of success, but because the alternative is slow death, and slow death is the only thing the sisterhood has never been able to resist. The boy who would be a weapon. The boy Miles Teg stood in the doorway of Odrade's workroom, flanked by Streggy and a proctor. He was dressed in simple gray, and his eyes moved from Belanda to Tamerlane to the Mother Superior, cataloging the tensions with a child's instinct for adult conflict. Come in, Miles. Sit down. He sat and folded his hands in his lap. Not a child's compliance, but disciplined attention that hinted at military training dormant in his genetic memory. Do you remember what we talked about in the orchards? About the gaps in your memory? The boy nodded. You said they might fill, or they might not. I have found a way to fill them. But it will be painful, and it will change you. You will remember things from a life that was not your own, a lifetime of the original's memories compressed into days or weeks. Some gholas go mad, others survive and become more than they were. Will I still be me? You will be him, and you will be you. Both. It is the way of the ghola. Odrade knelt to put her face level with his. The alternative is to remain as you are, a child who knows he is missing something but cannot reach it. The choice must be yours. The boy looked at her for a long moment. Then, with clarity that made the Mother Superior's heart ache, if the honored matres are coming, you need soldiers. You need the old commander. So I will do it. It will hurt. I know what pain is. In my dreams, I have felt worse. Odrade stood and looked at Streggy, who was watching the boy with undisguised tenderness. The acolyte had been caring for the child since his tank birth. Take him to the no-ship. Idaho and Merbella will be waiting. They will begin the restoration process immediately. And Streggy, after you deliver him, return to Central. There is something else I need you to carry. Streggy nodded, confused but obedient. She took the boy's hand and they walked toward the door. He turned back. "Will you be there when it's done?" he asked Odrade. "If I can." The words were honest, which was all she could offer. When the door closed, Belanda spoke. "You did not tell him you are his daughter. He will remember that soon enough. Let him discover it in his own time." Tamerlane rose with the slow, careful movement of the very old. "If you go to Junction and do not return, what do you want us to tell the Sisterhood?" Hodrade thought for a moment. What legacy did she want to leave? Tell them I was reckless. Tell them I gambled and I lost, or I gambled and I won. Tell them whatever history requires. But tell them this as well. We stopped hiding. Whatever else we did wrong, we did not die in our enclaves waiting. We made the hunters choke on what they tried to swallow. She walked to the window and watched the last light bleed red across the desert. Somewhere in that desert, sand trout were working, changing the planet cell by cell toward a future no one could predict. And somewhere in orbit, the no ship waited, carrying a 10-year-old boy who was about to become a weapon. Episode 2, The Forging of the Alliance. In the no-ship on Chapterhouse's landing flat, the Talilaxu master Cytail pressed himself against the barrier at the end of his corridor and watched the Bene Gesserit rush past in numbers he had never seen. A suck Dr. Gelanto, the one Odrade had sent to spy on him, hurried toward the ship's medical bay. Sisters and acolytes streamed through the hatches like carrion birds scenting death. Then he saw it. An acolyte carried a child on her shoulders, not the ghola. Teg, this one was smaller, wrapped in white cloth. His mind assembled the data with Tlialaxu speed. Murbala's baby, the one the Sooks had predicted for weeks. Born in the middle of whatever crisis had sent these women scrambling, the identification monitor near the barrier flickered a half-second glitch in the Ixian system. Cytali's eyes narrowed. The ship's automatic human identification circuits were the lock that kept him a prisoner. If the flicker recurred, if he could reach a console during that window, the vessel might recognize him as its master. He let the thought settle, then composed his face into the mask of a cooperative prisoner. Patience was the first Teliaxu virtue. The Sea Child's Farewell. Mother Superior Odrade stood at the edge of the last sea on Chapterhouse and watched the waves die. The water was already retreating. Weather control had begun the dehydration protocol she had ordered within weeks. This sea would be gone. The salt pans would crack under a sun that grew fiercer every season. The sand trout from Rakis, brought here by Sha'ana's design, would finish their work. Chapterhouse was becoming Dune, and she was helping it along. She had swum here one last time before giving the order. A sea child's farewell. The water had been warm, too warm, the currents sluggish. The sea had known it was dying. Behind her, Streggy waited with a report. The young acolyte had become Odrade's shadow these past weeks, learning the weight of command by watching its cost. The gardeners at Pondril are angry, Streggy said. Orchard Mistress Folly says the truffles are failing. The cork oaks are leafing too early. The desert is taking their best soil. Then they should learn to farm sand. She did not turn. What did you tell her? I told her nothing, Mother Superior. I am not authorized. Good, you are learning. Odrade finally turned. Her face was harder than Streggy remembered. The planet casts the final vote, Streggy. Not us, not the gardeners, the planet. We are temporary here. We were always temporary. Tell Folly that her people can grumble and wait for the Honored Matres to enslave them, or they can elect to go scattering. Those are the choices. Complaining about the weather is not a strategy. They walked toward the ground vehicles that would carry them south into the desert proper, where Sha'ana's observation station monitored the sand trout expansion. The heat pressed down Chapterhouses, new climate, no longer temperate, no longer forgiving. You are going to offer Sha'ana a council seat, Streggy said. It was not a question. Tamerlane is withdrawing from life. Her eyes have gone somewhere I cannot follow. The council needs someone who understands the worms, the desert, and what we are becoming. Sha'ana is the only candidate. The archivist will not like it. Belanda does not have to like it. Odrade climbed into the vehicle and let Streggy close the door. She only has to obey. The Captive and the Great Honored Matre. On Junction, in the citadel of the Honored Matres, Reverend Mother Lucilla sat in her tubular cage and watched the orange-flecked eyes of Great Honored Matre Dama study her. Dama's fingers drummed against her thigh, quick, shallow breaths. Lucilla had been a captive for days, no food for 3 of them, spice withdrawal burning through her nerves. Yet she had not broken the Lampada's horde of 7 million voices inside her. Other memory would not permit it. "You believe as we do," Dama said, the same phrasing she had used at the second interrogation and the third. Dama had been circling this argument since the beginning, wanting the captive to agree, wanting the mirror. "You want order, control, the strong ruling the weak. We believe in balance," the captive said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "You believe in conquest. Those are not the same thing. Your democracy is a lie. The masses cannot rule themselves. They are cattle. The Bene Gesserit are not a democracy. We are a meritocracy of the tested. Every one of our sisters has proven herself through the agony. Every decision is monitored by proctors who are themselves monitored. Power is distributed, checked, and rechecked. You rule by murder and sexual addiction. That is not strength. That is disease." Dama's hand moved faster than Lucilla's spice-dulled reflexes could track. The kick came through the cage bars and connected with her temple. The sound was wet. Final. The body crumpled, and the Lampada's horde lived on only through Rebecca Ongamu, through the sharing that had passed 7 million voices into a wild, reverend mother's mind. Dama stood over the corpse, breathing hard. "Burn it." 1